Okay, this is the brake rotor drag before I put the floating buttons in. Okay, so I've managed to get one of the buttons off completely intact. So I want to show you what the actual washer looks like. Can you see that it's wavy? This is to put pressure on the disc so that it doesn't make noises when you're rolling around at low speed. But still, if you put enough pressure on it, it'll actually move. But we're going to put essentially the same buttons on with a flat washer so that it can actually freely move side to side, and you get a lot more movement to stop the friction. Okay, so after you get the brake disc off, the back side of the buttons, where they have this folded over rivet face, you're just going to drill them till they look something like that. So you keep drilling, and you notice that on a normal one, the wavy spring is equidistant around the ring. Then on one that I've drilled out, it's kind of popped all the way to one side. That's when you know to come to the other side, a smaller drill bit, just to drill the inner bit of the button, and it pops straight off. You're left with this. Okay, so a few things to remember. So if you can see, I've got a black arrow and a red arrow, so that I put the whole rotor back together in the exact same orientation, just in case there's some sort of weight distribution difference. I've got an arrow here to show which direction it is and which wheel it's for. I've also got left written here. Once this is completely apart, you also need to clean, just with some brake clean, the inner area of where the new buttons are going to sit. Okay, I'm using these buttons from TPO Parts. They're actually for a Ducati and for a 4.5mm disc, but I've got a 4mm disc, so what I'm using is 2 spaces per button rather than 1. And I've read on the forum that this works. We'll see how much movement it has after I've put it together. Okay, so I'm going to lay the buttons out, putting 1 washer on each face. So that goes through, this is going to come into the carrier, put a washer on the other side, and then a C-clip into the groove. So I decided to only put 5 or 6 of them in first, because that's going to be easier to hold it in place when I put the rest in. So now you see the underside, and we're going to put this washer on the opposite side, and then the C-clip is going to come in and be pushed on there. Okay, so I got all the buttons installed. You can see there's movement between the carrier and the disc. I'll show this on the bike later. You can see the buttons. But the good news is there's no movement back and forth, only side to side, so my discs aren't worn. And when you put the rotor bolts back in, you just put a little bit of Loctite on them to make sure they don't come undone when you need them the most. A little bit of Loctite, and then back in. And when you tighten them all the way down, you just get a torque wrench set to 22 nanometers, and you wait until it clicks, and you're good. Okay, when you put the wheel back on, you gotta make sure these are still loose. Obviously, when you put the axle back in, this gets tightened to 65 Newton meters, the pinch bolts to 20 Newton meters. Remember, we just put these to 22. And then when you put the brake calipers back on, the brake caliper bolts go back to 35 Newton meters.